you. The chair now recognizes Ms. Stansbury for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I understand that we are joined by a proud New Mexican today, and so I want to welcome Mr. Tom Patterson for his testimony here today. As the Congresswoman for New Mexico's 1st Congressional District and a vast swath of public lands, the issues around the protection of our public lands, our endangered species, and the uses of those lands, both for ranching and grazing and traditional uses, are near and dear to my heart and very important to our communities. As we all know, the Endangered Species Act has provided decades of protection for species that were threatened and endangered and faced irrevocable extinction from the face of this planet. The passage of this bill was as much a scientific imperative as it was an ecological imperative to ensure that our ecosystems could function and the natural world could continue to provide the services that it has for generations. This law protects vulnerable populations, as we know, and these species and their recoveries are the promise and hope and opportunity of the ESA. Now, we know that Mexican gray wolves, or lobos as we call them in New Mexico, are predators, and we know that they are a species that can cause challenges for our ranchers and farmers. And so it is for that reason that I am proudly a co-sponsor of the Wolf Act, which was introduced by Representative Stanton of Arizona and Representative Vasquez of New Mexico to help make ranchers whole when there is depredation on livestock as a result of the reintroduction of these species. But I want to be clear, the menace that we just heard about from my colleague across the aisle numbers only a total of about 286 total wild Mexican gray wolves in Arizona and New Mexico. Not thousands, not millions, 286 total animals have been reintroduced. Mexican gray wolves were considered extinct, extirpated in the wild by the mid-1970s, and over the last 50 years, we have had a successful reintroduction. They have continued to play a growing keystone role in our ecosystems and the restoration of those ecosystems, and hopefully in the coming decades we'll continue to see their populations increase. But the science is very clear. They are nowhere near recovered, even as they are still challenging predators in the context of ranching and farming. And so I want to say here today to my colleagues, friends, and constituents who are in the ranching business, I stand in solidarity and support of your livelihoods, and we'll do everything that we can to help protect your livelihoods. But we also need to make sure that we restore our ecosystems and protect our species. And so, Madam Chairwoman, I humbly but emphatically oppose this bill. Secondly, I want to talk about H.R. 2073, which is the Defending Our Dams Act. As a water resources manager who spent my entire life working on water resources and the restoration of ecological systems associated with our rivers and streams, we understand the importance of making sure that the historic and vast rivers of the West are restored, and not only for their ecological importance, but their cultural importance. And it's important to understand that there has been decades of litigation on the lower Snake River to ensure that the historic damming of those rivers that impacted the salmon fisheries that are subject to numerous treaties of our tribes and the federal trust responsibility are rectified. So at the end of the day, this is not just about the restoration of that vast watershed and the river and ecosystem that it sustains, but it is also compliance with both federal law and tribal trust and treaty responsibilities. And so, again, I humbly but emphatically oppose that bill. So I thank you for the opportunity to share my position on these bills, and I ask my colleagues to join me in voting no. Thank you.